Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for news stories from Yellowcat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. Today, we have new amazing stories, so subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet, and let's get started. In your experience, what is the shortest possible time that a new employee has ever been fired? Worked in a sales call center about 10 years ago. Real brain-dead work. On a Monday, the new employee begins work, receives basic training, which takes approximately an hour, is given a desk, and then reports to work. Little steamy puffs appear to be coming from his computer monitor 30 minutes later. It turns out that he was using a disposable e-cigarette that attempted to resemble a real cigarette to vape. The employer informs him that indoor vaping is not permitted and that, if he chooses to do so, he must go outside during a break. The same thing occurs again around 30 minutes later. He is warned in no uncertain terms that he must cease vaping at his desk if he wants to keep his job after getting caught once more. Before lunch, an hour later, he is discovered vaping while hiding under his desk and is dismissed. He could have simply walked outdoors. A male co-worker wrote in an email to a female member of the team claiming that he had a dream the previous night that the two of them had gotten married and that he had impregnated her. She was sitting on the opposite side of the table from me, and I could clearly see the expression on her face as she read the email. A strange look came across her face, then she walked into the manager's office. She left at the office, and he received a call shortly after, and he began packing his stuff a little under a minute later. I have a strong suspicion that it took him fewer than 5 minutes beginning to end in order to send the email and get fired. I was employed by a call center for communications. 2 weeks of training are required before you may answer the phone, during which you practice using the systems and making fictitious calls, etc. On their first day off of training, a fresh group enters the room. When a lady yells at the top of her lungs, everything appears to be going smoothly. She hasn't finished, so we all slam mute as quickly as we can. "You can't effing talk to me like that! F you!" she cries out again. Thankfully, our manager rushes over and cancels the conversation, at which point her boss turns to stare at her with bewilderment in her eyes and begins, "What the F?" Our manager whispers, "Pack up, you need to leave now and quietly," as the guards approach her from behind. "Please don't make us call the police." "No one talks to me like that!" To avoid receiving any more calls, everyone in our office is rapidly transferring our calls to other centers and moving to the front of the line. While it's crazy, some people are attempting to warm transfers by contacting the consultant who picks up. She is currently only screaming profanities. Police have been summoned, but she won't stop screaming. Everyone is just waiting and watching in the center. No one is able to exit either because our floor is secured. At this point, she is wielding the keyboard like a sword. It's just total madness. Finally, police show up and they lead her away. We are instructed to wait while the managers enter for a quick meeting. After the meeting, we are all told that we can leave with our salary. Counselors are waiting for the next shift in the break room. The duration of the training for the following group has been extended to 3 weeks, and operators who pretend to be aggressive callers are now used to observe how the trainees respond and ensure that such incidents never occur again. The greatest consultants to educate how to handle abusive clients and how to behave like a rude caller were us. Software industry. An IT worker who had been previously convicted of widespread software piracy promptly uploaded a terabyte of pirated files to the company server. Retail. During a shift, a worker took a computer duster and puffed it in the supply closet. She pretended to be cleaning when caught because strange odors and hissing sounds were coming from the supply closet, and she wasn't on the floor where she was meant to be. Each lasted for about a week. I've seen somebody give up in less than 4 hours. At one point, the bartender at the not particularly upscale cocktail bar where I was drinking had hired a friend from a dive club. He said that it wasn't for him after about an hour. I disliked having to remember to place drink coasters under them. wished to forget the names and formulas of the cocktails. He served beer and shots at the bar, simply hung up the apron and walked away. Another temporary employee who was working in marketing once arrived, departed for lunch, and never returned. Didn't even tell anyone. Although the agency was quite embarrassed, I was impressed since it was sort of a power move. I used to work in clinical trials where I oversaw a sizable division that assisted with study execution. This means that the FDA and pharma clients were frequently hosted by us. She presented a fantastic interview via Zoom and claimed to be an executive assistant. I seem to recall being struck by her smile. Our administrative staff had ended up in the hospital, thus we were in severe need of a contractor. The interview panel consisted of 4 people, and we all concurred that she was pleasant, articulate, and amiable. With her, we did go through all benefits. She inquired, as usual, about lunch, parking, and overtime. As a contractor, she had clear restrictions, and we were quite honest with her. She entered the office a week later. She was missing numerous front teeth, which was the first thing that everyone noticed. In addition, she inquired about the location of the cafeteria 10 minutes after arriving. I pointed out the location of our tiny kitchenette and told her that there is a deli downstairs. She requested a corporate card so she could make lunch purchases. I informed her that the employer only routinely provided snacks and beverages and that this was not an option. Lunch was up to the employee. She barged into HR insisting that we owed it to her to pay for her lunch and that it was outrageous that our company had a cafeteria because she wouldn't work on a computer. She was unhappy that, as a contractor, neither she nor her chair were next to a window or in an office. Her allergies were being worse by our carpets and a migraine was starting. We had to allow her to work remotely if we wanted her assistance. She declared that she would be willing to support phone calls. Now, keep in mind that she stated during the interview that she was an expert at scheduling executive meetings and understood everything about Microsoft Outlook. HR politely asked her to leave. All in all, she lasted about 23 minutes. Worked second shift at a factory. We would prop open the doors alongside the side street in the late evening to try to catch a breeze in the heat. One night, an intoxicated man enters the building through a side door and just starts chatting with everyone as if he owned the place. I approach him to try to explain that he shouldn't be in there, but he responds by informing me that he is scheduled to begin working that evening. We sort of debate about the fact that I didn't have someone new starting that night for about 5 or 10 minutes before I ultimately tell him that he needs to get in touch with someone in the office the following morning. The first shift supervisor informed me that he was scheduled to have a new employee start that day, but he never showed up when I arrived at work the following day. I informed him that the man had truly arrived, 12 hours early and inebriated. In a way, he was fired before his first day on the job. Reddit homeowners, how crazy are your HOA? Despite the pleasant winter we had here in Colorado, there is a severe drought at the moment. Because of limits on watering our individual homes as of last month, I and a couple of my neighbors were planning to xeriscape our yards. To comply with their philosophies, HOA and our city planners had to individually approve each house plan. While the city planners did so, HOA did not because they became enraged when they learned that 15 or so of the houses would be built on rocks and desert plants. Every day, the HOA sent letters and emails to our neighborhood accusing us of being ignorant and self-centered for modifying our yard and repeatedly making derogatory remarks about our way of life, our financial situation, etc. After a bribery scandal involving the HOA, which paid off several contractors to renovate our yards when really they were planning to deliberately ruin them so we couldn't get homeowners insurance money, the county eventually got involved. Finally, the town overruled the HOA, allowing us to proceed with remodeling our yard. Now HOA has no power here anymore. All they can do is look on with disapproval, but we don't care. One particular lady, a crazy bee, shouted at my friend for attempting to enter the gate of the neighborhood behind her because she had opened it with a code and he didn't want to exert himself by inputting it on the flimsy code pad. She was furious and terrified that he would rob everyone in the neighborhood. Remember, this was in a suburb of a city with a crime rate of less than 0.07%. She then suggested that we develop a procedure for visitors who don't reside here at the following HOA meeting. Few people agreed with her proposal that we should call the police and have stickers placed on everyone's cars identifying them as residents of the area. We all ignored her whining and demoted her from her HOA leadership position. She hasn't been seen since. After we graduated from college, I married a highly smart and gorgeous woman who immediately went on to acquire a high-paying position. So, we made the decision to purchase a home in a lovely area. Because of the HOA, I attempted to discourage her, but she persisted and the house was lovely. Conflicts with the HOA, though, started right away. On our first day in the area, the president paid us a visit. He was probably annoyed to see me meet him while wearing grease-covered clothes. I was repairing my vehicle. I was raised on a farm, spent 4 years in the active army, where I attained the level of E3, and am now an officer in the National Guard. I'm used to conversing with folks who believe they are superior to everyone. The HOA president initially engaged in some small talk before advising me to change my home siding since it clashed with the new color scheme the association had chosen. "Are you gonna pay for it?" I questioned, turning to face him after looking at my house. He said no, with a startled expression. I chuckled and informed him that I wasn't paying to install new siding merely to coordinate with a color scheme. When I decided to fence in my backyard, the next problem arose. My dog couldn't give a flying crap about an invisible fence. If she wants to go exploring, she will breeze right through it. So I called a guy to come give me an estimate. The fence contractor contacts me back and informs me that my HOA prohibits fences of the desired height. You are allowed to erect a fence that is approximately waist high. He should come give me the estimate and I'll take care of the HOA, I informed him. I went down to the president's home and informed him that I was constructing a fence. Cool, he tells me. I move on. I receive an email as I'm leaving that informs me of the neighborhood fence rules. I go around again and return to his house, telling him that my fence will be 8 feet tall. He attempts to convince me it won't. After some back and forth, I decided to settle on 6, which was the height I had originally desired. I ignored his warning that it was still too high. Fence was constructed, and I received several letters written in stern tones. My most recent major argument occurred when I chose to erect a flagpole in my front yard. On those flag mounts on the house, you are permitted to fly flags, but not from a pole. I installed a modest 18-foot flagpole despite his instructions that I not do so. I considered flying the American flag at first, but changed my mind. I'm from Pennsylvania, but I currently reside in Illinois, so I switched between flying the Bloody Bucket and the Pennsylvania flag. The president noticed me warming up for my run while he was out for a morning stroll. He politely and considerately asked me to fly the American flag. I pointed to the Pennsylvania flag that was currently flying and told him the flag had flown while I was in Afghanistan. However, I now had that flag in a case that was hanging on my I Love Me wall, and I would continue to fly it until it was completely torn. Unbeknownst to him, I always replace the flag as it begins to tear. After 4 years, the HOA appears to have given up trying to impose any of its regulations on me. Even their position on fences and flagpoles has since changed. Nothing else I've done has really irritated them. These things are not what I do out of spite. I just do it because I want to make these changes to my home since it's mine. Okay, so my choice of flag was a touch spiteful. That's a funny story. The Indian person next door was having mysterious white vans arrive often, according to waves of emails sent out by a woman in the association just last week. She asked to know their plans and the purpose of their weekly visit. As it turns out, hospice is merely coming to care for her elderly folks. I've seen some of the most offensive and racially offensive emails in a long time from this woman. She has made other stupid complaints before as well, but it was the last. This tenant filed a complaint against her for harassment by letter. And at the next meeting, he made a very impressive speech, as a result of which this woman was removed from her position on the HOA board. My parents' neighborhood's HOA was established after they constructed their home. Prior to then, the entire street, which is in a rural region, only had 4 residences. My dad was informed that he was not permitted to own barns. He had 2 of them as well. He was informed that he couldn't have trailers and boats on his land. In the trees beyond the home, he keeps his boat. His thinking is, I was here before you, so I'll do what I want to do. My father has no interest in this HOA at all, but they just can't seem to settle down. And recently, the HOA chairman showed up at my parents' house with special equipment. They picked the moment when my father was not at home, only my mother. They literally destroyed our sheds. Before my father arrived on an urgent call from my mom, instead of 2 sheds, there was just a pile of garbage. And they had the nerve to bill us for it. My father was furious. He called the police right away. My father sued the HOA. I don't know all the details of the case, but my father won in the end. The HOA had to reimburse a huge amount of money for the new sheds, and they also got a restraining order against approaching our house. And the best part is, my dad was right about it being here before the HOA, because our house is not part of the association. Guys, thank you for all the support and likes. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. See you next time.